Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, prices for everyday goods will come down. That's what White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said after President Trump lowered tariffs on imports of beef, coffee, and other food products. A farmer joins us to discuss how the new move could benefit farmers and consumers. House Speaker Mike Johnson answered a question on the Jeffrey Epstein files before the House is set to vote next week on the release of more files. He also sought to clarify any connection they have with President Trump. And South Korea finally obtains the green light from the U.S. to build a nuclear-powered submarine. That's to better counter the military threats from China and North Korea. New York and New Jersey have lost billions of dollars in taxes due to an exodus of residents in recent years. We talked to a Miami Republican strategist about why people are moving to states like Florida. Voters in Chile are deciding between a communist and an ultra-conservative candidate as their next president today. The main issues impacting the election. And is artificial intelligence in the middle of a bubble like the dot-com craze of the late 90s? NTD weighs in on AI investment risk.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Arlene Richards. Dozens of criminal illegal immigrants have been detained today in Charlotte, North Carolina's largest city. That's part of the DHS's operation launched yesterday, known as Operation Charlotte's Web. Gregory Bovino is the commander-at-large of the U.S. Border Patrol. He documented several of the arrests on social media, which he said had risen to 81. One man arrested today had an alleged history of repeated drunk driving incidents. Another man allegedly had a history of aggravated assault with a dangerous weapon and drunk driving. Federal authorities have carried out similar efforts in cities including Chicago, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. Charlotte's Mayor Vi Lyles and other local officials criticized the raids, saying they're generating fear and uncertainty. DHS hasn't said how long the operation will last, and federal authorities say they're also ready to help individuals seeking legal guidance on immigration matters. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett is weighing in on the growing cost of groceries. This morning on ABC's This Week, Hassett suggested prices for food staples like bananas, beef, coffee, and tomatoes will come down after the Trump administration's latest exemptions are implemented. He also noted that prices will fall as the supply of goods entering the U.S. increases. Take a listen.
The prices for those goods weren't necessarily going up just because of tariffs, and so the prices will go down. Well, the prices will go down, of course, but
because the tariffs have been taken off.
Right. Well, and because the supply of the goods into the U.S. is going to increase.
The administration on Friday announced that agricultural imports would largely be exempt from reciprocal tariffs. Average grocery prices were 2.7% higher in September compared to last year. But the cost of coffee has soared 21% in a year, and bananas are up 8%. Hassett pointed out a number of external factors, including weather and disease, as driving most of the price increases. He stated prices would drop once duties are removed. In an interview with Fox News, House Speaker Mike Johnson spoke about the current state of the debate over the Jeffrey Epstein files in the U.S. House.
President Trump has clean hands. He's not worried about it. I talk to him all the time. He has nothing to do with this. He's frustrated that they're turning it into a political issue, and it's not surprising because the Democrats have nothing else to talk about. What have they accomplished in 10 months? Epstein is their entire game plan. So we're going to take that weapon out of their hand this week.
This week, the House is set to vote on releasing files related to Jeffrey Epstein that are held by the Justice Department. Last Wednesday, the House released 20,000 pages of documents received from the Jeffrey Epstein estate. Trump was among the names found in emails, but the emails lack context. Trump and Epstein were photographed together decades ago, but the president has said the two men fell out prior to Epstein's convictions. Johnson said the deceased Epstein victim, Virginia Giuffre, has also said Trump had no connection to Epstein's crimes. Trump recently instructed the Department of Justice to investigate prominent Democrats' ties to Epstein. Congressman Ro Khanna is a California Democrat and an original sponsor of the petition calling for a vote on the Justice Department's files release. He said today that he expects more than 40 Republicans to vote in favor. President Trump expresses disapproval with Indiana state lawmakers. He says they need to push forward with redistricting efforts. Colin Fredrickson has more.
In a Truth Social post, Trump mentioned state senators Roderick Bray and Greg Good. He mentioned how their lack of effort in pushing for election maps more favorable to Republicans could cause the party to lose seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. He also mentioned Indiana Governor Mike Braun. On Friday, Bray said there were not enough votes to redraw the state's map, so the Senate would not hold a session on the issue as called for by Braun. Braun said on X that state senators should show up to vote for fair maps. Trump said Braun is not working the way he should to get the needed votes. He also said any Republican who votes against redistricting should lose his seat in the primary elections. Trump has put a lot of pressure on Indiana Republicans lately. He has invited their state legislative leaders to the White House and has sent Vice President J.D. Vance to the state. Redistricting typically occurs once a decade to use data from the U.S. Census. But lately, Democrats and Republicans have been locked in state-to-state redistricting battles before next year's midterm elections.
A rare earths deal between the U.S. and China will hopefully be done by Thanksgiving. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made the remarks during an interview with Fox News that aired today. Here's the Secretary.
We haven't even finished the agreement, which we hope to have done by Thanksgiving, and I am confident that post our meeting in Korea between the two leaders, President Trump, President Xi, that China will honor their agreement.
The U.S. and China announced a framework agreement on October 30th. As part of the terms, Washington agreed not to impose 100% tariffs on Chinese imports, while China would hold off restrictions on export of crucial rare earth minerals and would buy more American soybeans. During the interview, Bessent rejected a recent Wall Street Journal report which said Chinese officials plan to restrict access to rare earths for U.S. companies with ties to the military. When asked what the U.S. would do if China didn't honor that deal, Bessent said the U.S. had lots of levers but remains optimistic about the deal for now. Asked whether Chinese companies could be kept out of U.S. stock exchanges, Bessent said, quote, "All options are on the table." A big moment for the defense alliance between the U.S. and South Korea. South Korea finally obtains the green light from the U.S. to build a nuclear-powered submarine. That's to better counter the military threats from China and North Korea. NTD's Flora Hua has more.
The deal is part of a finalized fact sheet on security and trade released by both nations on Friday. The chief of U.S. Naval Operations says having nuclear-powered submarines can help South Korea better counter China. He adds the key Asian ally has the responsibility to deploy these submarines globally, and so it can build a worldwide naval presence. The South Korea side highlights the need to counter North Korea. Having the U.S. consent to build nuclear-powered submarines has been the country's goal for decades, but building such submarines can take years. What's more, the South Korean president confirmed on Friday that the country also secured the U.S. approval to expand activities like uranium enrichment and nuclear fuel reprocessing. The deal comes after President Trump met with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung 2 weeks ago. Flora Hua, NTD News.
President Trump says he's open to a deal that would give Saudi Arabia some of America's most advanced fighter jets, the F-35s. The comments came as he heads into a high-profile meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince next week, where they're expected to sign new economic and defense agreements. Aboard Air Force One on Friday, the president told reporters that Saudi Arabia is looking to buy a lot of F-35 stealth fighters made by U.S. contractor Lockheed Martin. The F-35 is the U.S. military's cutting-edge stealth fighter designed to evade detection and gather high-tech intelligence in the air. But the potential jet sale is raising some concerns. A recent Pentagon intelligence report from the New York Times on Thursday warns that China could gain access to sensitive F-35 technology if the deal goes forward. On top of the potential deal, Trump is expressing hope that Saudi Arabia will eventually join the Abraham Accords. It consists of the U.S. brokered deals that helped normalize relations between Israel and several Muslim-majority nations. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said today Israel remained opposed to a Palestinian state.
Our opposition to a Palestinian state in any territory west of the Jordan River, this opposition exists, is valid, and has not changed one bit.
Netanyahu has been facing pressure from right-wing ministers who said a U.S.-backed statement indicates support for a pathway to a Palestinian state. Addressing the growing violent incidents in the West Bank in recent weeks, Netanyahu said Israel will act against settlers' violence with full force. And President Trump said Friday that he plans to sue the BBC for billions of dollars. That's after the British media outlet published a misleading edit of his January 6, 2001 speech.
We'll sue them for anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion, probably sometime next week.
So you're ready to take legal action?
I think I have to do it. I mean, they've even admitted that they cheated.
The BBC's Panorama documentary spliced together two parts of Trump's speech on January 6, 2021. The edit changed the meaning of the speech, creating the impression Trump had explicitly called for violence. The documentary aired just before the U.S. presidential election in 2024. The BBC has retracted the documentary and apologized to Trump, but it did not agree to compensate him. Trump said he plans to speak with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer about the matter over the weekend, noting that Starmer had tried to reach out to him and was very embarrassed by what happened. Voters in Chile are heading to the polls today, deciding between two extremes. The two main presidential candidates are a communist and an ultra-conservative, respectively. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has more on the election.
The first round of presidential elections in Chile has officially concluded on Sunday afternoon. The race offers Chileans a dramatic choice between two extremes. Janet Jara, who is a card-carrying communist and former labor minister in the left-wing government, and the main right-wing contender, José Antonio Cast, who is an ultra-conservative lawyer and former lawmaker. He opposes abortion and vows to shrink the government. Cast went to the polls on Sunday to cast his ballot.
If I am not elected today to move on to the second round, this will have been the last presidential election in which I participate.
In total, there are 8 candidates. If none of them get over 50% of the votes, then a second round will be held in December. The election is widely believed to head in the second round. Communist Jara is expected to win the first round because the conservative vote is split among more candidates. However, polls indicate that Cast will ultimately become the next president. Jara also headed to the polls on Sunday.
Fortunately, I am able to walk calmly down the street, among people who know me and among those who don't.
One of the main issues in the election is violent crime, especially the danger posed by Tren de Aragua, which is designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the Trump administration. Many of the members of the gang entered Chile illegally, creating chaos across the country.
People aren't feeling safe anymore. At night, you can't even go out in your car or to a bar, because they might steal your car too.
Even the criminals here in Chile, who were not accustomed to such violence, had to adapt.
If no winner is decided on Sunday, the second round of elections will be held on December 14th. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
As of now, the two leading candidates are head-to-head, each having around 25% of the votes, with 15% of the votes counted. And a farmer weighs in on the president's latest tariff move to bring down the high cost of groceries and help farmers become more profitable. That and more when we come back. President Trump on Friday rolled back tariffs on more than 200 food products, including such staples as coffee, beef, bananas, and orange juice. That's in the face of growing concerns among American consumers about the high cost of groceries. Here's more.
The new exemptions were announced on Friday and include such staples as coffee, beef, bananas, and orange juice. They took effect retroactively at midnight on Thursday. The move marks a sharp reversal for Trump, who has long insisted that the sweeping import duties he imposed earlier this year are not fueling inflation. Trump was asked about the rollback aboard Air Force One on Friday evening.
President, you've said that the tariffs do not increase prices for consumers, but now you're lowering tariffs.
I didn't say they don't. I say they may in some cases, but to a large extent they've been borne by the country. As an example, we have virtually no inflation.
Trump also said he would move forward with a $2,000 payment to lower and middle income Americans that would be funded by tariff revenues.
Now we're going to do a dividend, and we're also going to be reducing debt.
Friday's list of exemptions includes products U.S. consumers routinely purchase to feed their families at home, many of which have seen double-digit year-over-year price increases. The White House said Trump decided certain food items could be exempted since they were not grown or processed in the United States, and after, quote, significant progress the president has made in securing more reciprocal terms for our bilateral trade relationships. Trump has focused squarely on the issue of affordability in recent weeks,
Our work to lower the cost of living,
while insisting that any higher costs were triggered by policies enacted by his predecessor Joe Biden and not his own tariff policies. Democrats have won a string of recent victories in state and local elections in Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City, where growing voter concerns about affordability, including high food prices, were a key topic.
And now, joining me to discuss the new tariff exemptions is Brian Reisinger, a farmer and journalist and the author of Land Rich, Cash Poor. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Now, Brian, there's two things happening here as I see it. And the first is that the president had to do something about these grocery prices going up, which some said was caused by the tariffs on foreign goods. And then the second thing is he had to open up international trade for American farmers who are overstocked with food they can't sell. So how will this latest move improve both of those issues?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the key here is that if you reduce these tariffs, allowing more beef to come into the country while also using the opportunity to open more markets for farmers abroad, you can accomplish two things. You can hopefully bring more beef into the country and help deal with the beef prices that Americans are facing, and you can have American farmers able to sell more beef and other crops and products across the globe. So the hope is that you're able to do both of those things, and they tie in with the two issues that I think you're rightly flagging here, which is the cost of food is very important, as is making sure that we have a strong market both domestically and internationally for our farmers because of how much they've been getting wiped out for decades now. It's important that we balance both those things.
Now, you said here that if more beef comes in, then that could lower the prices. But then you also talked about farmers here in the U.S. also selling beef. So how does that balance out?
Yeah, you know, we have to see how it's going to shake out as the markets evolve and we see how much American beef people are willing to buy in other countries. But you know, when the beef price is higher here in America, your average family farmer and family rancher isn't making more money because the amount of times that beef is sold and resold between the farm gate and the dinner table. And so when we have more beef coming into America, as long as it's balanced with more market opportunities for farmers and ranchers to sell abroad, it means that a farmer and rancher can sell some beef here in the United States, they can sell some beef abroad, and that can balance out the idea of more beef coming in from other countries as long as we have opportunities going in both directions. Let's say we're shutting down markets, foreign markets for American farmers while letting more foreign countries import here. That would be something that would create an imbalance and make things even harder for farmers. But new markets for American farmers and new markets for farmers from other countries to be able to come in here and help bring the beef price down, if that's the effect that it has, is something that can work if you're doing both those things at once.
Now, last year you wrote in an opinion article for Farmers Advance that farmers supported Trump's call for more tariffs despite knowing they crushed sales. And you seem to acknowledge that it would get worse before it got better. So in recent weeks, farmers seem to be losing their patience. So what were some of their biggest concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the reality is that for farmers, two things are true at once, which is that they've been getting hit by unfair trade standards since the 90s. And so many of them do support getting tougher and understand that that may mean tariffs at times to have tougher negotiations. It's also true that they need open markets. And so this has always been a balancing act of getting tougher with other countries to try to have deals that are more fair to American farmers as well as workers and families, and also making sure that we don't shut off markets as we have tougher negotiations. What happened very recently is that China snubbed American soybean farmers completely. And, there were negotiations going on between America and China decided that they were going to target American farmers as collateral damage to try to put pressure on the administration. And so you saw farmers who have, in many cases, maybe supported getting tougher, also understanding that things with China were getting tough enough and China was retaliating enough that we needed to figure out a way to make some kind of a deal. Now, since then, the trade deal has been announced, and I think what family farmers are hoping is that can, allow the soybean sales, for example, to increase the levels they were before, but also hopefully we have a deal that is a little tougher overall and keeps China from doing some of the cheating and other things they do that hurt our farmers. So the hope is fair markets and free markets. We need open markets and we need them to be more fair. And so this is a complicated picture, and farmers deal with those cross-cutting winds every single day.
Now, you talk about China and some of the things that they have done to hurt farmers, but how have these reciprocal tariffs impacted maybe relationships with other key farm trading partners, for better or for worse?
It's a good question. And the reality is that it's different with each country. Some of these countries have responded with progress and making deals that allow us to knock down trade barriers. Some of them have not. The reality is this. What we need to do is diversify our trading partners drastically. And so, whether people support the trade deal with China or the UK or Japan or Malaysia, Indonesia, any of these other countries that there was progress made with, whether people like those individual deals or not, we need those deals to be family farm first. But we also need to open up our trade with more countries. There were only about 20 trade deals in the years between the Biden and Trump administrations. 20 trade deals. There are hundreds of countries. And so what we need to do is open up more markets. And what you can also do is when you're negotiating with individual countries like that, you can have tougher, more fair trade deals because America has more leverage negotiating individually. So if we can greatly diversify where we're trading, no one country can have as big of an impact on us as, say, China did this fall.
Now, are you and other farmers in different industries confident that this change that President Trump just made with the tariffs will benefit farmers in the short term?
Well, we have to make sure that there are enough markets being opened abroad in a fair way to farmers in order for that to happen. So if they want more imports to bring costs down, and we have to see how the economics of that shake out, we also need enough markets opening up where these other countries that are benefiting from the reciprocal tariffs being brought down, those countries are willing to buy more American beef. So we need enough of these countries to follow through for that benefit to occur. It's very important. And the other thing is many farms are needing to figure out where their next opportunity is going to come from. The farm that I grew up on, my dad is still farming, my sister's working to take it over. And as we all work together to figure out where our farm is going, we're selling beef, we're selling pasture-raised chickens, we're doing cash crops. We have to figure out where can our money come from. And increasingly, farmers need to diversify. For decades, farmers have been pushed to specialize on a few crops and products. That was the economic pressure. And what we're seeing is that can go too far. Because if you're only a soybean farmer and you're depending on China, you just had one of the toughest years you've ever had. But on the other hand, if you're diversified, trying other things, there's an opportunity to maybe blunt some of that. And so some of it is farmers seeing what these other countries are going to do, and some of it is farmers constantly trying to evolve, and there's very little time and very little money for farms that are operating on such tight margins to do that.
Now, we've talked about the constraints on farmers, but what about the consumers? How is this new move by President Trump going to help consumers with other products, not just beef or chicken, but other kinds of products that consumers want to buy?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Coffee and others, which are major imports and really need to be imported, are going to be impacted by this as well. And I think that when people there's a little bit of a debate about how much of this is going to bring prices down. And here's what it depends upon. What it depends upon is how many foreign producers of these goods sell into our country in an affordable way and how much of it gets bought. So there are market forces here that will have a say in how much this brings prices down, just like there are market forces at play. They'll have a say in how many more markets get opened up to farmers abroad, American farmers abroad. So we have to see just how much movement there is in the market for this to have an impact. But if things were to go in the way that I think the administration is hoping they will, what we'll see is that beef, coffee, cashews, a wide variety of food products would be in greater supply. Now, there's a deeper issue, and that is that the reasons that American beef have been so expensive also is systemic. It has to do with our supply chain after wiping out 45,000 farms a year for the past century. And it has to do with things like the Mexican screwworm that are infecting Mexican beef and endangering the American beef supply. So there are deep systemic issues that also are impacting the price of beef that we have to address over the long term as well.
Now, I want to get your thoughts here. The Supreme Court is now weighing whether or not the president's global tariff measures are legal. And if the court decides that Trump didn't have the authority to impose these tariffs, how could that impact farmers and consumers?
Yeah, well, I want to start and say I'm far from a constitutional lawyer, and so the questions being addressed there are above my pay grade from that standpoint. But what I'll say is this, when court decisions lead to drastic shifts in policy, these are the kinds of policies that, hopefully the president and Congress are able to work together on what the right balance ought to be. When you have a court that might suddenly rule one way or another way, it can throw a dramatic amount of chaos on top of any of the chaos that we've already had. And so, the realities of all these things are thrown out. You're going to have a wide range of markets that are suddenly reopened without the negotiations in place that we're trying to force trade deals to be tougher on the one hand. On the other hand, you're going to have more countries able to import into our country. And whether that is something that we do or don't want is something that should be discussed and debated. The challenge is when a court ruling can suddenly swing an entire country's economic policy in such a drastic level. That's really an incredible amount of whiplash for American farmers, workers, consumers to be dealing with. And the fallout is something that we would be seeing over the course of many days, weeks, and months as we see how all of these countries react to America suddenly reversing course.
Well, I think the justices are considering all of these concerns, and hopefully they will allow this to remain balanced. Brian Reisinger, farmer and journalist, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Nearly 113,000 plug-in hybrid Jeeps are being recalled due to a possible issue with the engine. According to Stellantis, the engines could be contaminated with sand from the casting process, which can damage the engine. Stellantis says in rare cases it could result in a vehicle fire. The recall covers certain model year 2024 to 2025 Wrangler 4Xs, as well as 2023 to 2025 Grand Cherokee 4Xs. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration says drivers may hear a knocking noise coming from the engine or see a malfunction indicator lamp owner. Owners will be notified by mail at the end of December. Hourly employees at Walgreens will no longer receive paid vacation time for 6 major holidays, including Thanksgiving and Christmas. The moves come about a month after the pharmacy giant was acquired by Sycamore Partners. Walgreens announced last month that it was laying off roughly 80 corporate employees. Last year, the company announced it was planning to close about 1,200 underperforming stores. Walgreens has not responded to a request for comment. New York and New Jersey have lost billions of dollars in taxes due to an exodus of residents in recent years. A political strategist discusses the influx of northern residents to her home state of Florida. And is artificial intelligence in the middle of a bubble like the dot-com craze of the late 90s? NTD weighs in on AI investment risk when we return. A recent report by Unleashed Prosperity shows that New York and New Jersey have lost billions of dollars in taxes due to an exodus of residents in recent years. They found that from 2013 to 2022, New York lost $517.5 billion in resident incomes, while New Jersey lost $170.1 billion in that same time period. Now, where are they going and why? Joining me to discuss is Angie Wong, Miami GOP committeewoman and Republican strategist. Angie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, despite the recent election results, states like Florida and Texas have been seeing a noticeable increase in residents since at least 2022. Now, politics aside, what are some of the reasons why people have been leaving these two northern states?
Well, certainly politics is wrapped up in this, but more importantly, I think Wall Street is trying to find a new home. So Wall Street has left New York and Chicago and finding homes where I am here in Miami. We're seeing lots of PE firms, lots of VCs, and lots of Wall Street firms opening here, and really enticing all of their employees to leave these blue cities to come to a red state like Florida, mainly because of income taxes. There's no state income tax here in Florida. And also just a quality of life and the cost of living is, much lower than other cities that we've seen. So I think those are great enticements. Clearly, we're seeing a mass exodus. It's no longer necessary to be in some of these used to be cities. I'm from New York. I left New York in 2020 to move down here to Florida. And, we get the same comforts as we do also in New York. So I think a lot of families, especially some of the higher executives, are seeing the same things. You get a lot more for your money here. You get a bigger house and you get a better quality of life.
Well, New York in particular has had a high and consistent rate of residents moving out each year. And for at least the last 10 years, the reason has been crime and affordability. But in recent weeks, there's been more discussion about how socialist policies may drive people away. So the mayor-elect of New York, Zohran Mamdani, won on a platform of affordability, yet some residents and businesses are planning to leave. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, and I was just coming off a plane from LaGuardia Airport in New York, and I will tell you, I was speaking to my neighbors. A lot of them are Jewish, and they are looking for second homes in Florida should Zohran Mamdani really play out his socialist fantasy in New York City. A lot of people go back and forth. He may do it, he may not do it. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, may allow him to push through a lot of these free policies. But, there is a bit of a scare because I think the media, as well as the campaigning of Zohran Mamdani, seem to be a little bit anti-Jewish. So I don't know if that was just campaign rhetoric or if that is something that he wants to implement in New York City. I hope not, because it's one of our biggest Jewish bases. So I don't like that, but they are looking for second homes, and certainly the realtors in Florida are super busy.
So you're saying Jewish residents of New York are looking for second homes in Florida?
Yes, and I saw a plane full just this morning, getting on the plane today, and that is exactly what's happening. And also speaking to my Jewish friends in New York, everyone's a little bit nervous because, again, if you haven't lived through several campaigns before, you don't know if it's campaign rhetoric or if this is a reality for New York right now. Clearly, we do all sorts of things during campaigning to push out the votes, including fear mongering. And so I generally tell people stay put just to see how this plays out. I don't believe that New York City is going to suffer the way that a lot of people do. But again, if people feel fear in their hearts, they're going to leave. And that happened. We had a mass exodus during COVID. Lots of New Yorkers moved down to Florida during that time, mainly because of the shutdowns, right? And Florida had much, much more relaxed rules about this. You could walk on the streets. You didn't have curfews, and shops were open, things like that. So I think people really look at that and say, hey, that's the kind of lifestyle I want to live. I don't want to be feared and be locked in my home all this time because my government tells me that. So I think Ron DeSantis did a fantastic job in looking at the scientific measures of what was going on during COVID, but also allowing people to live their lives.
Well, let's talk about Mamdani's platform a little bit. Now, one of the biggest promises he made was to lower everyone's costs by having government-run grocery stores and free rent. So why would those solutions to affordability cause residents to leave?
Yeah, and those are just pipe dreams. Like, you're not going to have free rent. I think people who bought into that really bought into a fantasy. You're not calling up your landlord come January 1 saying, I'm not paying my rent this month. I hope people do not do that. What he's talking about is a rent freeze as far as any price increases. But again, the nuances may not have trickled down to the average voter. So I think those things have to remain in place. And I think Kathy Hochul was the adult in the room to say, hey, hang on, no one's getting free rent here. There might be some freezes on increases, but nothing beyond that. As far as free grocery stores, things like that, remember, you have a state legislature that has to pass these things. And you have to have Governor Hochul sign off on these things, and also a city council in the way. So there's a lot of things that you could say, throw around free stuff. It sounds great. Will he get any of it done? I would be surprised if he did. I really would be.
Well, Fox News recently said that 9% of New Yorkers had planned to leave the city if Mamdani won the election. Now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis suggested to Fox News that he would continue to welcome New Yorkers to Florida as long as they don't bring leftist politics with them. So do you think that it's mostly conservative residents who are leaving New York and New Jersey?
Well, I'll tell you the part of Miami that I'm in, Brickell, which is the #1 area code moving to my district, which is downtown Miami, and Brickell is 718. And that is Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, moving to Miami, bringing down their cell phones or phone numbers with that number. So we know that there's a big constituents coming up from north down to Miami. And whether or not they're bringing their politics, that has yet to be seen. I've run a few campaigns here, and we've gone through a few elections. Generally, what I'm seeing is that they don't get involved in politics down here, not as much, or they vote independently. So I think there's not necessarily a crossover of bringing blue policies here. They're not very welcomed. And being a Miami GOP committee woman, I certainly would be the first one to talk to them to try to change their minds.
Now, while this migration benefits southern states in terms of resident incomes, there could be some disadvantages in areas like the housing market and the economy. So how do you expect Florida to deal with these kinds of changes?
Well, over the last decade or so, there's been a lot of housing developments. We've probably have about at least 20 new buildings coming up in my district of downtown Miami. These are residential towers. There's a lot of boom, a lot of money coming in. In fact, airlines are now rerouting to do direct flights to Miami Airport because of all the money coming in. So we're looking at Miami being the new world city. We have a lot of money coming in already from the South in South America, but also now in Europe. And now we're hearing a word that perhaps a few Asian airlines want to get involved as well, because they realize that Miami could be the new Wall Street. And we're certainly seeing that with the tech boom and a lot of the Wall Street offices moving down here. It's been fantastic to see. Yes, there's some infrastructure problems that we'll have to work out, but housing won't be a problem. There's plenty of housing here. It's more about the schools and also our roadways to accommodate all these new residents.
Well, hopefully Florida can continue to thrive and it won't impact the economy so much. Angie Wong, Republican political strategist, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
As tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela keep rising, President Trump says he's made up his mind regarding the next steps he'll take. Venezuela's socialist leader, Nicolas Maduro, is now preparing for possible armed conflict with the U.S. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has a recap on the situation and the latest developments.
So the U.S. military started attacking small boats, which it says are trafficking illegal narcotics from Venezuela to the United States. Now, according to the Trump administration, those boats, the drugs on those boats, they could potentially kill hundreds of thousands of Americans if the drugs reach the United States. Now, separately, earlier this month, President Trump ordered an aircraft carrier strike group to the Latin America region. This now brings the total number of U.S. soldiers in the region to 12,000. And on top of that, there's also almost 100 American fighter jets in the region. Now, because of those developments, some people say they think that the U.S. is preparing for military intervention in Venezuela to overthrow socialist leader Nicolas Maduro. President Trump actually just on Friday was asked about that and about his plans, about his next steps regarding Venezuela. Let's take a look at what President Trump said.
I sort of have made up my mind, yeah. I mean, I can't tell you what it would be, but I sort of made up my mind.
What do you say to some of your supporters who might not be excited about another foreign campaign?
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I can't tell you what it is, but we made a lot of progress with Venezuela in terms of stopping drugs from pouring in. But we have a Mexico problem. We have a Colombia problem, meaning Colombia, the country. We're doing very well. Drugs coming into our country are greatly slowed, as you can imagine.
I just want to add real quick that the tensions between the United States and Venezuela, they didn't just start under President Trump. Actually, when Trump returned to office in January, the US already had a bounty on Maduro. Just on Friday, Maduro requested international aid for Venezuela to help stop the growing US influence, the US military presence in the Caribbean. Maduro says the US is trying to start a war in the region. Now, Washington, of course, says that it's just trying to stop the boats of those narco traffickers. And besides Maduro's appeal for aid, he's now also actively preparing for direct conflict with the United States. Just this week, Maduro signed into law a new national defense framework. He's uniting Venezuela's civilian and military forces. And he's calling on his people, on the people of Venezuela. Maduro is saying that they should, quote, prepare for armed struggle to defend Venezuela and its sovereignty. And he's also preparing a national military police exercise soon. Let's now listen to Maduro and what he said while signing this new law earlier this week. Let's take a look.
If we, as a republic, as a people, must go to armed struggle to defend this sacred heritage of the liberators, we must be ready to win, to triumph through the path of patriotism and courage. So, I proceed to sign and execute the law.
It's widely believed that Maduro wasn't actually re-elected as the president and that he cheated during last year's presidential elections. That's what a lot of Venezuelan citizens think. And that's also what the United States and other European nations came to the conclusion to after official investigations. They concluded that Maduro did indeed cheat. I mean, just ask any Venezuelan citizen you might know. Chances are, I mean, not of course, but chances are that they want Maduro to go. So my point in this, the point I'm trying to make is that most Venezuelan citizens, from what I've seen, are not actually standing behind Maduro in this whole back and forth with the United States.
It's been many years since overinvestment into the rise of the internet produced the dot-com bubble and crash. Now experts are noticing similarities with the quick rise of artificial intelligence investing into stocks and startups. NTD's Sean Marshall has a look into what's going on.
There's no playbook for how to handle the explosion of AI stock, according to the CEO of Deutsche Bank's $1.3 trillion money management wing. Concerns that the AI sector is a bubble ready to pop are growing.
Investors should be cautious, not afraid.
Analysts have drawn comparisons between the AI investment craze and the 1990s dot-com bubble.
We currently are in the middle of an AI bubble where stock prices have grown a lot faster than actual profit has. Valuations are currently inflated based off of AI hype, and ultimately prices need to adjust and level out eventually to match reality and actual earnings present.
The recent artificial intelligence rally is different from the dot-com bubble. Today's boom is driven by everyday retail investors, not institutions. Questions have been rising about how much higher AI favorites can go following their already high gains.
Buying during hyped up periods means buying at the top, and investors should really be ignoring the hype and focusing more on diversity instead of chasing whatever's hot in the given moment. Tech trends, they come in waves, and when AI hype fades, a new emerging popular technology will come with hype surrounding it.
At the start of this month, Palantir was sporting a rise of nearly 174% for the year so far. The so-called Magnificent Seven, including Nvidia and Meta, have seen their share prices soar, fueling fears about the scale of market exposure to just a few names. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
A New York Jets player hospitalized after being shot in Manhattan. The shooting happened early this morning. The team has responded. And Paris is getting ready for Christmas cheers starting from today with lights along the Champs-Élysées. More after the break. Police found Jets cornerback Chris Boyd with gunshot wounds in Manhattan earlier this morning. The 29-year-old is in the hospital and is listed in critical condition. Police blocked off a mid-Manhattan street where the shooting occurred. The New York Jets said they are aware of the situation. Fox News reported that no arrests have been made yet as the investigation continues. Boyd came to the Jets just this year. He has not played in any regular season games yet. He is listed as an injured reserve. He came into the NFL in 2019 after he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. He has also played for the Arizona Cardinals and the Houston Texans. A friend from his college football days told the New York Post that Boyd is doing well. Ernest Quander was a coach and Boyd was a player at the University of Texas. He said Boyd was in good condition and he is on his way to see him in the hospital. Pedestrians in the German city of Nuremberg made their way for hundreds of bleating sheep today as the woolly flock was herded through the downtown on its way to its winter quarters. About 600 sheep were driven through the historic center as part of a popular annual tradition. Each year, the shepherd leads his flock to new pastures outside the city. During the summer months, the sheep are used to keep the grass in nearby meadows short. Nuremberg isn't the only German city where sheep are used as lawnmowers. They also graze in some other places, including the nation's capital, Berlin. The sheep's slow munching makes for insect-friendly grass care, helping preserve biodiversity and also save city authorities the costs of mowing. We are entering the holiday season in Paris. Christmas illuminations go live on the iconic Champs-Élysées Avenue. The trees on one of the most famous avenues in the world were illuminated with a wave of lights radiating and switching colors, all the way from Place de la Concorde to the Arc de Triomphe. The illuminations will take place every evening from 5 p.m. to midnight from now to January 4th, 2026. With the exceptions on December 24th and 31st, for which the lightings will shine all night. This annual tradition cements Paris's nickname as the City of Lights, perfect for holiday magic today and beyond. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. And that's all for tonight's news. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Arlene Richards. Good night.